Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Latinas Power Talk. I am your host, Kenya Vasquez. Happy Wednesday, amigas. I hope you guys are crushing your goals and doing everything that you guys envision because you guys are capable of that and so much more. Today's guest is none other than TV personality Kristina Guerrero. Hi. How are you?
I'm so great. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for
being here. And also, I love it when you roll your R's. Kristina Guerrero.
Guerrero. Somos Latinas. You know, it's like if my mom caught me saying Guerrero, she'd be like,
I'm sorry, what?
I did not raise you like that. Don't act like you don't know English. Don't act like you don't know Spanish.
Yeah. I was raised saying Kristina Guerrero. In fact, one of my first TV jobs, it was in San Antonio, and the producer was like, you know, we're in San Antonio. Can you maybe say Kristina Guerrero? And I'm like, I've never said my name like that ever in my life.
You're like, I can actually say, yeah.
And so I was like, how about if I just say it the way I say it, and then hopefully people will jump on board? And he's like, you do you. I was like, okay, cool.
And that's funny because years ago, there was this one Latina anchor here at a station in Phoenix, and she said mesa instead of mesa.
Oh, mesa, yeah.
And it was this whole worldwide thing of like, the way that she pronounces words. It's not like, you know, she doesn't say mesa. She says mesa. And it was like this whole thing. But, you know, I think people loved it too because it sounded like how we speak. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was like authentic. But anyway, thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah.
I just want to start by saying thank you for representing Latinas on E! News.
I appreciate that. That gets me like right here because as a little girl growing up, like I didn't have people that looked like me.
Exactly.
And so when I hear other Latinas, other brown little girls, adults, women, saying that, I'm just like, I mean, that gets me every time. So thank you for saying that.
The power of representation. Like I grew up watching E! News. I always said, I want to go into the entertainment field and either do acting or be an entertainment reporter. And E! News was like at one point the goal.
Yeah.
And we didn't have anyone except you that looked like us, that understood us, that had a last name like us. And like the power of representation is big. Like you have little girls, you have a future generation just like saying, you know what? She looks like me. I can do it.
Yes.
You know, and you kind of opened the door. Now, thankfully, you know, E! News has a little bit more representation. But you really kind of were a trailblazer in that, you know?
I do feel... I feel so lucky to have had that opportunity, to have been, you know, in the right place at the right time. Right timing is everything.
Yes.
I had certainly like done the work. I had gone to school. I had paid my dues. I had, you know, worked my way from the ground, from the bottom up. And so when my number was called, I was ready and I was prepared. But there's certainly well before me, there were Latinas who were just as deserving, who were talented and capable and amazing, who just didn't have that opportunity. And so I do feel like it was a gift and a blessing that opportunity was mine. And I never, ever took that lightly. I always, that was always a responsibility that I held very high.
Did you always know you wanted to go into entertainment, TV
Always.
personality? Always.
Always.
Since you were a little girl?
Since I was
Were
little.
you grabbing that little mic in front of the mirror and just like saying, you know?
I always tell the story that when I was little, my mom would always say, you talk too much, because I talked all the time and I talked to strangers. I just loved talking to people. I was very connected to people. And when other little girls were watching, you know, cartoons, I was obsessed with Entertainment Tonight.
Oh, okay.
As like a little girl, I was so in awe of Hollywood and movie stars and red carpets. And so from a very young age, all through junior high, all through high school, I'm like, I'm going to be on red carpets. I'm going to interview celebrities. I am moving to Hollywood and I'm going to do it. So it truly was a little girl's dream come true to end up on E! News.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now looking back, like you did that. You made it.
Yes.
It was probably a lot of hard work because you come from a small town, right?
Yeah.
So where were you raised?
So I'm from a really small town in central Washington state. It's called Sunnyside, and it is a very small agricultural town. So a lot of the Mexicanos that were there came because they were migrant field workers, right? So then they set up and we had generations of Mexicanos living in that particular area, which is how my family got there. And so growing up, it smelled like cow manure. It was 3 hours from any like major city. We didn't have a lot. I grew up very, very poor. But I did have this sense that I was meant to do, I felt like my dreams were going to come true. Like when people were like, that doesn't happen to people like us. And that doesn't happen to poor people. It doesn't happen to brown people. It doesn't happen to small town people. But I just really felt like, no, it has to happen to someone. And I think it's going to happen to me. And so I went for it. You know, I went to college. I packed up my, like I always say it was a cliche, like the Hollywood cliche. I packed up $1,000 and a couple of things and moved to Hollywood, was waiting for like the welcome wagon to say you have arrived. And of course, none of that happens.
Right.
I got there. I had no place to live. I didn't really know anybody.
The tough reality of getting there.
Yes, exactly. But it was such I look back on that time so fondly. And even when I was in it, when it was really hard, I was like, oh, this is going to be a great story to tell one day on a podcast with Kenya Vasquez. Like I always just knew like, this is what it's about.
Yes.
Knowing that there was, at the end of the rainbow, there was the pot of gold. If I could just get there.
When you're in LA is a whole different beast. Where if you have not lived there, like it's really like, people can tell you can hear it on movies, you can hear it, in podcasts or whatever, but until you live it, you really don't understand how difficult it is. Like,
especially for a girl who didn't know this from that, right? Like I'm a small town girl from the country. I always took it one step at a time, right, when I was there. So when I got there, I was like, okay, I need to be in college. I need to be in school. What's the best broadcasting school? USC. So I got myself into USC. Okay, now I need to get an internship. Now I need, and so I was very...
Took it by steps. Yeah.
I was very strategic in how I was going to take it step by step and climb that ladder realistically. And then I was like, oh, I'm not going straight to the top. I mean, wouldn't that be great? But and if that happened, that would be awesome. But I just knew that I just had to take it step by step. Yeah. And so everything was very strategic. What's the best school to get into? Who can I meet? Who can I network with? USC. I'm going to get into USC, their broadcasting program. And I just kept incrementally climbing that ladder. And I would I was so fearless. Sometimes I'm 45 now and I'm like, I wish I was still as fearless as I was when I was 21 years old, because I would just make opportunities happen. Like I would see the person who was in charge of hiring and I would drop whatever I was doing and I would get into an elevator and I'm like, oh, hi. Well, this is weird that we're standing in the elevator. I'm Kristina. I'm the intern. I want to work here one day. And then he's just got his look. He's like, oh. And then when an opportunity, he was like, who's that? What's that one girl that just randomly ended up in the elevator with me? Hire her. She seems like she can do it. And so I just was fearless and
you were
relentless.
Determined.
Very determined.
You knew what you want and you went after it. And I feel like sometimes we're like, excuse me. But if you want something, dale con todo.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Also, I find that as I'm getting older, I'm that, excuse me.
Really?
I'm like, where is she? Kristina,
Really?
where are you? Go after
Why do you think that is?
Because I have more to lose, right? At the time I had nothing to lose. I have kids now.
But do you think social media kind of impacts that? Because
interesting.
Years ago, let's just even talk about 10 years ago, social media was very different. You know what I mean? And it probably, I don't know, I'm thinking did it make a difference? Now having everything shown on social media, what's my next move? People are going to see all my followers.
Everything's about branding.
Everything is about branding.
Yeah.
It's
oh, that's
is
interesting.
it now how social media kind of plays that layer where antes I feel nos valía, who even knew? Now we're exposing everything online.
Yes.
You know?
And if you go big and it falls apart, then now everybody knows it falls apart.
Right.
But also I also kind of love that vulnerability. I don't know, there was just something different about that time. I mean, I had nothing to lose because I had nothing to lose, right? I didn't have a place to go back to. I knew I couldn't go back to my small hometown. I knew I couldn't do that. I didn't come from money. I didn't come from things. I didn't have a plan B. I didn't.
Right.
And so failure was not an option. I had to go for it.
Failure was not an option. And I feel like sometimes it's not talked about, especially like we're talking about social media, right? People see like influencers and you think they just blew up overnight, and that's not the case.
No,
That is
incrementally.
yes. And like how I like how you were saying, like you took it step by step. Okay, I need to go to USC. I need to find an internship. Who can I connect with? What emails can I send? You know, who can I like greet in the elevator and all this stuff? And it's like, it isn't an overnight thing.
Yes.
I think we need to start getting rid of this idea that it's like, oh, I'll just post one video and blow up and become like,
and then you go viral.
Yes.
The thing with that, and here's the honest to God truth. I also was very strategic because I wanted to have a great foundation, right? Like I wanted to have a college degree. I wanted to have experience. I wanted to like pay my dues. Like I wanted to feel like I deserved that spot. I feel like when you go viral, when something happens really quick, like your foundation isn't strong enough to hold you, that if something shakes or there's a little bit of, you know, a life earthquake, that you have nothing to stand on. Like the way that I went about it ensured that I would have a very solid foundation.
Yeah. And I think that's what sometimes the Gen Z generation, and don't get mad at me, don't get mad, but sometimes
just listen to your elders. We know what we're talking about.
Like sometimes they're not taught these things of like, you need to have the importance of having something to back you up. You know what I mean?
And also it is very much like I worked really hard for it, and it took a lot of time. Like it takes a lot of effort. Like nothing's going to happen overnight. And if it does, it also could go away overnight.
Yeah.
You know?
That's exactly what my dad always says. Like, lo que llega rápido también se puede ir rápido.
Yes,
you know what I mean? You can lose it like that.
Your dad's smart.
My dad,
He
you
gets
know,
it.
sometimes I don't like to admit, but I'm like, okay, you
But
were
that's
right,
so
Dad.
that's
You know,
so true. That's
is.
so true.
And if you, what is that saying? I saw it and I sent it to my cousin the other day. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Oh, I love that.
You know, and I think it's super important. Like, yes, can people make it really quickly? Yes, but you know, it's like enjoy the process too. There is a process. I'm sure you look back and you're like, man, those days where I was in the elevator, those days when I was an intern, like you probably enjoyed it so much and learned so much from like everyone. You know?
have such a fond memory of that time because it really was, I was really growing up. I was really learning so much about myself and like what I was capable of. You know, I really, you know, I'm super impressed with her. She's got it.
Do you remember your first big opportunity?
Yes, my first big opportunity, like in front of the the camera. Yes. So, I was an intern and then a production assistant. So I was getting coffee. I was changing copy machine paper. I was just doing all of like the mundane tasks, but my heart really was in being in front of the camera. And I had heard about this network. It was called CTV, as in Yes TV. And it was like this multicultural new network that was coming. That was, you know, very much Latin infusion.
What year was this?
This was like in the early 2000s.
Oh, nice.
CTV,
okay.
right? And it was very much like Latin infusion, but it was all in English, right? So it was like this new generation of Latinos, and so they were looking to cast some shows. And so I went and auditioned for this relationship talk show. And again, I have zero experience. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a production assistant, but I got moxie. I'm just like, oh, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And so I walked into that audition and told them, I remember telling Ed Leon, and I said, I'm going to be a star. I know I don't have experience, so I'm going to be a star. You want to come with me? Or you want to be left, you know, behind? And he's just like, you're fun. And I got cast.
Do you believe in manifestation?
I believe yes and no.
Yes and no.
I believe in a higher power. I believe in God. And so I believe that the idea of manifestation is really God's plan for us and purpose for us, that we think we have the power to manifest. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So there was a time that I absolutely believed in manifestation. I was like, I manifested the shit out of my life. Like, this is amazing. Like, I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to move to LA. I wanted to and it's all happening. I now, having a greater appreciation for my spirituality and that journey, now recognize that those were all God-given visions. You know, that was all that was always going to be meant for me because that was a gift from God.
That was his plan. Yeah.
That was his plan. And so, you know, So that's kind of where I stand on manifestation.
Yeah.
Yes, I do believe like that we have the power to make our lives happen, but I believe that those are already ideas that were instilled in us from a higher power. That's what I believe.
I agree. I think you
Yeah.
beautifully stated that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
yes. What was it like? Like once you were there, like did you ever have a moment you're like, wow, I made it. I made it.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I had many of those moments. I had many moments where I was like, I dreamed this when I was like a little girl. And like I said I was going to do this. And I went and I did it. And I interviewed the biggest movie stars that you can imagine. And there were often times where I'm like, what is this little brown cowtown girl doing on a Hollywood red carpet with Brad Pitt? This is bananas. So yeah, I had those moments often.
Those pinch me moments, right? Yeah.
Very much
Yes.
so. But I always felt that it was, and I don't know, maybe this is the gift from God too, but I always felt like every job that I did was a stepping stone for another opportunity. So even when I was at E! News, right, the pinnacle, the place, the mecca, everything that I dreamt of, I was like, okay, but there's still another step.
What's next?
What's
Yes.
next? Which is a very tricky place to be, because on the one hand, sometimes you don't appreciate where you are. I know at least I did. Because I was like, what's next? What's next? What's next? But it's good also to have a vision for
Right.
for being ambitious, or
It's like
wanting more.
a mix. It's kind of a battle too of like living in the
Yes.
moment, but also like thinking ahead.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, you want to enjoy it, indulge in it, but it's like, okay, what's coming next? How do I prepare for it? How do I,
Yes.
envision my future? And I think, yeah, that's literally kind of like a battle that I think I do too, of like just being in the moment is sometimes so hard to accomplish because you're just so like, ooh, like what's
Yeah.
next,
As I've gotten older and, like I said, more into my spirituality, I realize that a lot of that has to do with anxiety and fear. Like, what's next? Because I need to, like, there needs to be more, but also not having enough faith that I am exactly where I need to be. And whatever is going to come next is going to come next.
At what point did you transition your mindset to that?
I would say just recently in the last few years. We're going to get into like what happened to me with my health, but really in the last few years, I've really become connected with that idea of being present, because all we have is today.
Yeah,
Right.
that is true. We're not promised tomorrow. And I feel like
Yeah.
as humans, sometimes I don't know if greedy is the right word, but sometimes we're a little selfish in our thinking and saying, oh, I'll just do it in 5 years or, I'll
Yes.
postpone it or whenever, I achieve this, I'll do that, but it's like, how do we know, and not to get like all dark and heavy, but how do we know we have 5 years? You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's like, why don't you want to do it now that you actually do have the time?
Yes. I wonder too if it's very much, I don't even wonder this. I'm more than positive it is a cultural thing, because there are cultures in this world in which they live every day, not striving, not with ambitions, not with what's the next career move, but they truly just like live happy and content and in the moment. And like that is good enough.
Yeah.
Better than good enough.
No, I think people come into your life. I firmly believe that people come into your life for a reason. And my boyfriend came into my life. I almost believe, I'm like, God, you sent me for this man to teach me that, because he's Mexican too, is Latino, but he has that mentality where he's just like, as long as we have health, we have it all.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good. Yes.
And I feel like I was always like, no, but I got to be doing something. And he's like, okay, but you also deserve rest. You also deserve to appreciate what is in front of you right now. And I'm like, you know what? Like God is so perfect. I'm like, I needed that. You know what I mean?
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's also like just a good balance, right? Like
Yes.
a good balance of like,
good balance.
Like, let's go because that's in your heart. It's who you are. It's like what God made you to be, like,
Yeah.
a producer of things, but also like take the time to rest.
Yes. So you touched a little bit about something that you dealt with a couple years ago. I want to talk about that. So October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and you went through a situation like that. I was reading all about your story, how you had no idea that this was even something that was, one, possible, but two, that your tests were going to come back in that way, you know? So tell me a little bit about that situation.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer, which is still crazy to even say out loud, but this happened about a year and a half ago. I had just come off of a very transformational year of finding my source, finding my higher power, letting go of a lot of negative things. I stopped drinking. I really like looked internally to like really heal myself from some childhood trauma, right?
Yeah.
And so I was on the back end of that. I was like, you know what? Something big is about to happen. I just know it. I think that last year was preparing me for something big. And because I'm a hustler, I'm like, it's career. Something big is going to happen in my career. It's always been career for me. And I went in for a routine mammogram like I do every year since I turned 40. And they said there's something that we have to kind of take a look at. I'm like, it's nothing. Cancer doesn't run in my family. Breast cancer doesn't run in my family. I'm sure it's nothing. And then it came back that I had a very aggressive form of breast cancer. And when you get news like that, all of a sudden, like, first of all, it's whiplash, right? Like, it's like, wait, what? No, are you sure it wasn't the Today Show? Are you sure it wasn't like some big like TV show was calling me? No, it's breast cancer. That was the big thing that I was prepping for. I have 2 little boys at home, and I'm a mommy, and they're the most important things in my life. And for the doctor to tell me, if we don't get this out of you, you will die. It will kill you. That is very humbling. That brings you right to Jesus, where you're just like, I will do anything to survive this. And so, it was super traumatic. I had to undergo some treatment. I had a unilateral mastectomy, which means I lost my right breast. But I always say, like, what I lost, I gained tenfold. I gained perspective on life. I gained perspective on what's important. I gained perspective on my health. And I gained perspective on being present. So when you ask, like, when did that happen? That's really when it happened. When you're not promised tomorrow, all of a sudden, like, why am I worrying about what's going to happen a year from now? Why am I, like, waiting to go to Bali, in 10 years? I'm going next week. And I did. I went to Bali right after I recovered from surgery. And so it was really like a come to Jesus moment for me. And so the gratitude that I have for being able to survive it is immeasurable.
So you mentioned every year you were getting your annual checkup, right? Did you notice something different?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
So there was no lump, there was no nothing?
No, and I'm excited to talk to you. Excited, that's not the right word. I'm eager to talk to you about this because you were talking to me a little bit about how from very young age, your mom was always very like...
Yeah. My mom, so ever since my started growing, she was always like, you know what? You need to check them. You need to touch them. You need to just like, if you ever feel anything weird, if they ever start to hurt, if you ever see like different color or something, like you need to tell me, or
that is
like
so progressive of your Latina mom.
Yes. Which I'm like, I was blessed with a good mama. Shout out to my mom because I love her so much. Like everything that she taught me, I'm like, wow. Like, especially because in our community, we don't talk about those things. No. It is rare if we even have an annual physical exam by our doctor. It's rare if we even have a doctor. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. It's so, as I've kind of gone on this publicity train to talk about breast cancer, specifically among Latinas, I am finding how much culture has to do with maybe the reasons why we're not getting, checked or getting our mammogram, or we're finding out that we have breast cancer much further along because we didn't get our mammograms, right?
Right.
And a lot of it is because in our community, in our culture, there's a lot of modesty. There's a lot of shame around your body, around touching your
private
body.
parts.
Right, exactly. Yes. And so because of that stigma, we don't even have those conversations.
Yeah. No. And I appreciate my mom so much because I am feeling them all the time. I'm like, I just,
yes.
It's super important.
Had I felt myself, because it wasn't until afterwards that I was like, I don't know. I mean, oh my gosh, there's something there.
So there was
something there. I just had never thought to do that. I always got my mammogram, and only for one reason, because as a journalist, and I've been doing this for a long time, every October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I always interview somebody who got their mammogram and was saved because of early detection.
Right.
And I did that because I was like, well, if I'm going to tell other people to do it, well, then I should do it. But it was never, ever in my thought process that I had to do it as a precaution. I was really doing it just to like check it off my list. You guys, I do it, so you should do it too.
Right. But even more so, like I've thought about this for years. Like I feel like a lot can happen in a year, unfortunately. And I think that's where my mom's advice like is instilled in my head of like, okay, yes, it's important to, once you're 40, you know, it's a routine checkup, you know, every year. But what are we doing, one, before it, because women can also get it before then, but two, what are we doing throughout the year so that once the year comes up, it hasn't been there for like X amount of months.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and yes, exactly. Because 1 year prior, I had gotten my mammogram and it was fine.
Yeah.
And it only took 1 year for that lump to grow to be the size of a robin's egg. In 1 year. And it was a very aggressive type of cancer. And I always, like, here's what I think about all the times that we put off taking care of ourselves.
Right. Because we're taking care of everybody else.
We're taking care of everybody else. And it's just like inconvenient. I just went last year. What could happen in this year? I will go with, like, there was a point where I was like, you know what? Everything's fine. Okay, I'll go. But there was like a back and forth. Had I like just been like, you know what, I'll just go next year or I'll go in 6 months.
Yeah.
Who knows what could have happened, right? And then the other part is that, yes, we are not talking about a breast cancer that affected our grandmothers or even our mothers. It's affecting our generation at younger and younger ages. So women very young are getting, like, there was a time when you thought of breast cancer like 60s, 70s. Like now it's like 30s, 40s. It's the insurance companies are completely behind because we should be allowed to get our mammograms at 35, if not before,
if not
then.
30 or before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that self-check is so important, especially if there's something that doesn't feel right.
Did you feel any pain or any discomfort?
No, not really.
No?
No. I mean, there was a couple of signs here and there that if I like went back, I'm like, oh yeah. But I had 2 babies. I breastfed my babies. I was like, oh, maybe there's something, maybe there's something going on there. Or, I had a breast reduction. And so
Scar tissue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, I kind of explained all these things away because I was like, no way. That is not going to happen to me. That's not even possible.
So I was reading within 2 weeks, I think you were going into surgery right after, right?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed in January, and then within a couple of weeks, I went into my first surgery, which was a lumpectomy. They took out just the cancer. They were hoping to save my right breast, but what we found when we got the pathology report was that there were still cancer cells around what we found, and so that meant they didn't know how far the cancer had moved into my body. Or into my breast. So the only way to ensure that we got everything out was to remove my breast. After that, I didn't have to do chemo, but I did 6 weeks of radiation just to make sure that absolutely everything was gone.
And that's someone like, please go get checked. Please go get checked. Even if you say, you know what, like, I don't have a family history. Like, you didn't have a family history. No. This is your sign that, like, do it right now. Like, give yourself 5 minutes after watching this. Do it right now, even if you're still playing the podcast. You know what I mean? Of scheduling your appointments.
What's going on right here?
Yes, like really get in there. Like my mom is always like, you really have to like. Your mammogram really
is your mom a nurse?
She's not.
Does it run in your family?
No, thankfully it does not run.
Where does she get this wisdom from?
I honestly don't know. And like she didn't grow up with her mom, so it's like even that of like thinking like who taught her? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Who taught her? But no, my mom has always just been super super open and just like vulnerable, even about sex. Like I remember like. She was growing up. She was like, I'm not going to tell you not to have sex.
Yeah.
But if you do, this is what you use to protect yourself.
Yes.
Because pregnancy is not the worst thing that can happen. You can also get very, very sick. And I remember being like 12 years old and being like, okay. You know?
Oh
like,
my God,
like,
your
yes.
mom sounds amazing.
Yes,
Your
she
mom
was
needs to
like-
be like, go into like schools and teach.
I
mean,
know.
I've had 2 kids and I still haven't had the conversation about sex with my mom.
You still haven't. I mean, all these things are such a taboo subject within our.
So-
And sometimes I wonder why.
Like, that's why I talk about how, like, I lost a part of my body. Like, I lost my right breast. That's traumatizing. It's so traumatizing. But I just feel compelled, which I don't want to talk about that, right? But I feel so compelled to talk about that because that's a reality. And also, if I can just inspire one person to think, I don't think we intentionally, like, we're not anti-mammogram, right? No one's anti-mammogram,
Right.
I think. But I really do think we just lose track of time, or we forget, or whatever the case is. And so my hope is that they would listen, they would hear it or whatever, and just be like, oh, I've been meaning to do that. Now I'm going to do it. Today I'm going to do it.
And I think one thing I've also like learned throughout this podcast is that as women, I'm not a mom, but as women, we take care of everybody else and we forget ourselves. But this is your sign that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of everybody else that you love. You have to be okay. So you have to prioritize yourself, and that's not being selfish. Again, our cultura is like, ay, ¿cómo que se va a ir to book a massage? Like,
Right.
¿cómo que te vas a hacer esto? ¿Cómo que that's okay. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And like, go get your mammogram schedules, but even that, go get your, pap smear and everything as well checked at the same time.
Yeah,
you know,
I do it
'cause-
all at the same time. I've always done
Yes.
it all at the same time. And I just have one boob left. And I went and got my mammogram last year. I was like, I still got one good one. I'm just like, I just want to make sure that everything is
so
good.
what is the procedure now after? Like, do you have to get checked more regularly, or how does that
I
look?
have to go see my oncologist pretty regularly to make sure that the cancer doesn't come back. And then I'll just continue to do my mammogram like I would every year. And then also more self-checks, right?
Yeah.
So to make sure that nothing's happening in the interim. Losing my breast, it sucked. Losing your life, I mean, that's no comparison, right? And so, and then when you talk about like what we do to take care of everybody else, especially as moms, we just take care of our kids and, put them first. Like when I realized that my health directly affects them, I might not be here to take care of them. Then all of a sudden I'm like, no, I have to take care of myself so that I could be here to take care of them. And then that's the only thing that was important to me.
What advice would you tell someone who's maybe going through it right now?
Oh, who's going through it right now?
Yeah.
It's terrifying. It is so scary. That's what I would tell them. They already know that. No, it is. But there is so much hope. There's so much hope afterwards. And what I would say is that as you're going through this hard thing, trusting that there is a higher power at play is so important. But also everything that I've lost versus everything that I've gained is so much more. So, for instance, people say, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm like, I'm so grateful that I went through that. My life is better today because I went through all of that. And so I would say better days are ahead. Better days are ahead for sure.
Oh my goodness. Like, and I feel like sometimes like there are no words to console a person or to make someone feel better because, it's just words at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's just words. But I feel like, you're going to get through it. Like, if I am a faithful person, like if you want me to pray about it, send me a message and I'll send out a prayer for you because I firmly believe in that, and if it's what you believe as well, like I really do believe in power of prayer. But thank you for sharing your story because I'm sure someone like is going to get a mammogram, scheduled, and just like make it a routine thing, put in your calendar every year.
I did it around my birthday because I would think of it as a gift to myself.
I get a pap smear on my birthday too. Not on my actual birthday, but it's like, okay, my birthday's coming up. Got to schedule that, you know?
It's just a great reminder.
It is.
I feel like it's a good time to do it. I always think it's like a gift to yourself for sure.
It's super, super important to start talking about these things. Like it starts with us talking about it to make it not uncomfortable for the society or the world or whoever to, you know what I mean?
We're going to talk about boobs.
We're going to talk about
boobs.
got boobs. We all have them.
Got boobs.
You know what I mean? Yes, we all have them. It's like, I love mine.
Yes,
you know?
But also spreading the message, realizing that there is an important message to be sent to our Latina sisters because I mean, it's shown over and over, like research shows that we are not getting our mammograms, that we're finding out we have breast cancer much further along because we didn't take care of it. And so definitely early detection is key.
And even like, if you've scheduled yours already, go tell your mom. Go tell your tia. Go tell your cousins,
Post
your
it
best
on
friends.
Instagram.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Share it with the world.
Let's not only remember this in October. Like we should be doing this consistently.
Let's do it again. Let's do it in February.
Again. Yes, yes. Tell me a little bit about where you are now in life and what you're doing.
So I have taken all of the ups and downs of my life, and I really feel like I've been called to like tell my story, really share my story. And so I've been working on a memoir for the last year. It's called She Believed She Could. And it's really, you've heard that saying, she believed she could, so she did. And that has a really like inspirational overtone, right? But also I think that there is something to be said about really going through hard stuff and still within that hard stuff, believing that you can get out of it. And so, you know, I touched briefly on the upbringing that I had, which was very challenging with an alcoholic father, and my mom was on welfare and food stamps. So just growing up super poor, but then like realizing my dreams. And so within my memoir, it talks about, you know, the difficulty, the success, the dream come true. But that's not the end of the story, right? The story took a nosedive, and I found myself, you know, coping with alcohol, a substance that, you know, that ruined my family. And so then I got sober, and then I got breast cancer, then I lost my job, my show was canceled, and this is like all in like the last 5 years.
Oh my goodness.
So I do believe, because I do have a very strong faith in spirituality, that I'm called to write this book to show that that's life, right? But if you have a greater purpose and a greater faith, that you can get yourself out. Then you can believe that you can get yourself out, which is where She Believed She Could comes from.
Have you always had this like positivity outlook, this positive outlook in life? Yes. Even under like the darkest circumstances. You were born with it.
I was. It is a gift. Because to a fault.
It's like your superpower.
To a fault. Because even as I'm telling you all of this really personal and vulnerable stuff, like for me, I'm like, I overcame. And that's a gift.
Yeah. So when does this memoir come out?
I'm hoping in the next year. I'm just about done. I'm just about done finishing it. I just am proofreading it actually today. And so I'm excited to get my story out into the world. And then wherever it lands, that I can't control.
And I'm sure that process was very almost therapeutic as well.
Super therapeutic.
Right?
Super therapeutic.
To just like reflect back. Because I feel like as humans, we just like cope with it. We get over it. Okay, put it away. Never think about it. You know what I mean? But it's like tapping into those emotions, reliving what you were going through. Like it must have been like hard in a way too.
Some days writing was so fun because I was like back in college, and, you know, I was at USC, and I was like having fun. And then other times were really like I was a little girl who was sad that my dad wasn't around, and there was a lot of broken promises. So it really was like a lot of ups and downs as I was writing this book. But there were times where I thought I had I thought I had this figured out, and then by the end of the chapter I was like, oh, that is not where I thought we were going to end. Twist.
Yeah.
Where we were going to end up.
How do you like cope, I guess, or work through getting imposter syndrome when you're in an industry of people who look nothing like you?
I know.
You know?
I drank a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did. I say that I suffered in silence because also I recognized that it was truly a privilege to be in that position. And I did not want to take it for granted. I think actually that's probably where a lot of the debilitating anxiety came from, is because it was like so coveted. It was like this little thing that could drop and break and be gone. And I so cherished the opportunity to be a Latina representing other Latinas and telling our stories on, e-news and on a international platform. And I just didn't want to mess it up. I just didn't want to mess it up.
The stress.
Yeah, it was a lot of stress.
It was a lot of stress. Yes. Like I said, and we were talking about before the podcast, social media paints one picture, but when you really deep dive into someone's life, it has so many layers. And little would we have known that you were going through something like that. You know what I mean?
That's really the purpose of writing my memoir, is because I'm so grateful. You Google my name, it'll say Kristina Guerrero, first Latina on E-News, like that. I love that. And I got to wear really pretty dresses and meet really fancy people. And that's perfect. That's actually Instagram perfection, right? But that's not anywhere near who I am. And what gives me depth and what makes me strong and what makes me a warrior, none of that really does. Going through hardship and discovering new things about myself and then hopefully sharing that with somebody else, that's what really matters to me.
You made me realize sometimes I feel like and I think it's something that I need to work on too, now that I think about it, really revolve our identity around what we do.
Totally.
But why don't we start revolving our identity over who we are?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Who we were made to be.
Yes. And
yes.
I think, I'm going to take that from this episode too, of just sometimes my work I'm like, okay, I want to do this for work. I want everything really revolves over what I do in my career. And it's why can't we just be graceful with ourselves of
Yeah. And I will tell you, here's the problem with that. Here's what's really scary about putting all your identity in your work, is that your work could be gone one day, right?
Yes.
The business could fold, or everything could fall apart, or e-news can be who watches e-news anymore? That's not even exists. It barely even exists anymore, right? And so when we put our value into our work and that goes away, then we're left with who are we? And that's an identity crisis that I've had to face before, and also have just worked on coming out of, to recognize that no, that's not who God made. God didn't create me to be on red carpets and on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a gift. He gave me the gift of being able to connect with people and I love to perform. And, he gave you these beautiful gifts to connect with people and to interview people. And so, but that's not our purpose. It's not that's not our purpose.
What is your purpose?
I think my purpose is what it's always been, is to connect with people, is to relate to people, and to hopefully inspire people. I think that's what my purpose is. And to raise awesome, rad human beings. My two boys.
Rad human beings.
Yeah.
I love that. You're such an inspiration. I think you're just super open. And like I said, it was great to see someone who looked like me at a time and place where I was that was the vision. That was the goal. I was there's someone that looks like me. I can do it. If she did it, I could do it. You know what I mean?
I love it.
And it's so beautiful. And I feel it's such a nostalgic moment, because I remember being in my bedroom, at this was maybe in high school, where I was you know what, I want to go on e-news or do something entertainment wise, or even if I were to go into acting, I'm one day I'm going to be in the e-news studio. And I remember watching in my room, I still remember and seeing someone who looked like me, like I said. And it's just
that's
and now I'm speaking with you, you know what I mean?
And
so
here we are.
Thank you for everything that you encompass. Thank you for your light. Thank you for sharing your message. I truly, truly hope that it touches someone out there.
Thank you.
I'm so I'm fangirling right now, but thank you for your time.
You're a light too. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you guys for tuning in on another week of Latinas Power Talk. I will see you here back next week on Wednesday. Bye-bye.